Hello, what's up? We're still speaking about this situation, and I want to highlight some issues, right? The previous part, please go check it out, gauge your bearings, figure out what's going on there so that you might not be lost and devastated, therefore, as a result of all of your lostness. Listen up, you guys. This gentleman that I found on End Times Production that's literally too legit to quit and too intelligent for me to ignore, too anointed in all other subject areas for me to just write off. He caused me to really think, what in the world are we to do if at all Christ comes back? Not back so much, but raptures us in another 100 years or 120 years. What are we to do as the church? The world is literally going to the dogs. And then I investigated other things on social media as I keep on perusing the content therein. I picked up that there are some pretty berserk, literally bizarre and berserk agendas that are being pushed that are so berserk and bizarre that it is not just the church that is aware of the berserk and the bizarre nature of these things. For instance, this ecto-life, eco-life, whatever thing that is going on with all of these babies in some cryopreservation little bubble tube things that look like that ominous eerie scene in the movie The Matrix or The Resident Evil with Alice being duplicated multiple times in these little eggies. This ecto-life thing that's covered by just about anybody that's anybody on YouTube. All Christians, like a lot of Christians are covering it. Candace Owens covered it. Russell Brand covered it. Like just anyone at all that has got a conspiratorial channel covered it. And so it's real. We know it's real because of channels that are newsy and approved as official covering them. So it's not just something that you will only find on Alex Jones' show. It's not just a conspiracy. Do you understand? Where it is that they're literally like baking babies like they're baking bread in a laboratory. It is currently still a concept. However, one that is sufficiently near future possibility to be a facty that it will be covered on official news channels. It's eerie, right? That thing that they're doing with the whole trying to make babies in laboratories. I mean, on the day that you grow babies like you're growing peaches or grapes in a vineyard is the day that, if at all, you get a bad harvest because it's been eaten either by locusts or there are worms in it. You can just like throw away that yield and put it in the furnace. So essentially, if these babies come out looking strange with some kind of malformity, or there is a fire on site like that which we did not anticipate in South Africa in Boksburg under the bridge that killed so many people, if something comes near this facility that might wreak havoc in the babies that are being manufactured in this establishment, they could just be like, oh, this is a bad yield, so I guess like grapes that have worms in them at harvest time, let's just put them in the furnace. So, more what would be the tantamount of abortions would just happen in this facility because whoops, some funny air creeped into this facility and now the babies are gone. Basically, I was undergoing in my mind all different kinds of things of what could possibly go wrong with this thing and what are moral issues over and above the fact that you don't get to play God and those babies are not even really truly babies in the image of God. They likely are like the Nephilim in that they've been created in a strange, weird space that God does not approve, and so they will unlikely be eligible for salvation. We don't know. Over and above that being an issue, there is also the prospect of just killing them just because they didn't come out right, like a bad batch when you are baking. So murder is just going to be easily done and they're not going to be considered human since already they are considering children up to the third trimester in their mama's bellies not yet human beings, sufficiently enough for them to commit infanticide. In the US, there was a law that was passed after 28 days following their birth. So what then when they're in a pod, never mind a woman's stomach, okay? These are the moral potentials, dilemmas that are facing that particular ecto-life thing. But by mere virtue of the fact that that has been conceived in man's mind to do, suggests that we're in the last days. But like I said, literally anybody at all that loves to cover stuff on YouTube that is a Christian covered it. And so too did official news channels cover it. Russell Brand covered it. Candace Owens covered it. A whole bunch of conspiracy channel people covered it. It is grating and troubling enough. None of the people that I listened to cover this ecto-life disaster were approving of it. None of them. Nobody was at ease with what was being done. So for as long as there is a disquiet in the human genome of random, silly, foolish experimentation by human beings to try and be God, there is hope for society. The pushback for me is what I'm looking at. Like, we need to look in between the lines, you guys, to gauge if we are really truly at the very end of the end. We must remember that God is gracious. He is slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love. He is not willing that anybody should perish, but that all should come to a knowledge of truth. God loves the earth and the people in it. And if there is any semblance of hope on the ground for him to gather for himself a people, to sober them, to make them see that what's going on is basically rubbish on the ground, if there are still people sober enough to get into a consensus that something so heinous as the Ecto-Life Laboratory, ought to be like stopped dead in its tracks. Yes, the creation of that laboratory is heinous. But the fact that there was so much pushback is the hope for humanity. The fact that so many people spoke so negatively against it, that is the Holy Grail. That is what is the thingy-mabobby that we ought to look at as the grace of God in humanity, the common grace, the invisible qualities of God, the operating conscience of the human race. It is not that human beings are trying to create babies in a laboratory that should be our problem. The problem should be people that are happy to abide by that in their grand numbers with nobody pushing back against it. On the day when there is no resistance against berserk and bizarre, insane, crazy things that people are doing, that's when we are truly in trouble. Sufficiently enough for the Lord to, reap us. I am such a pre-trib rapture believer, and I am such a it's happening tomorrow believer, that literally, if you're going to listen to anybody, try and help Christians to be more balanced in how they look at the end of days, you should listen to me. Because literally, if you go into my channel, you will see that I am ever like, the Lord is coming, the Lord is coming. If anything, I feel like it's happening in 2 seconds. But at the same time, we have to be wise enough and Berean enough and scholastic enough and studious enough to gauge other cues in society as to, yes, it's the end, but just how end is it? That we might then make informed decisions as to how we're going to live our lives. It is very different and outworking of how you're going to live your life, you guys. If you know, based on your gathering of data, that this could happen in the next year versus, look, I can totally see how another 10, 20 years is feasible. You would likely make different life decisions if you imagined you had 1 year to live versus imagining you have 30 years to live. You would likely make vastly different life choices. So I'm trying to avert believers from making the incorrect life future plans because of their gauging of the future being only 5 years at most old versus 30. If you are not putting money away for your children's university funds because you imagine you're all going to go in the rapture, your kid is going to get to matric, grade 12, and literally have to take out student loans in order to pay, put your kid in debt because you imagined that in 2023 God was going to come and get us. So I decided rather not to get that life insurance policy. We are in this world, we are not of it, but because we are in it, we need to live among these people and thrive. We have to plant vineyards. It's wise. We have to save up an inheritance for our children. It is wise. We have got to do that which God has put us here on the earth to do and not squander our inheritance. That I believe that's also the reason why God did not give us dates in the scriptures. It is precisely because if at all dates were given us close to that date, people would stop being biblical in their Christianity, and so they would bury themselves away, make like hermit crabs, or put their talents in the ground. That was just the conversation around the Ecto-Life thing. It is disturbing, and enough people have spoken about it as being disturbing. And if you go down in the comments section of all of these people covering the Ecto-Life disaster, they all agree that this is just insane. We're in the last days. It's ludicrous. If enough people think it's ludicrous, there are enough people worthy of salvaging the earth for. Do not forget that that the Lord, upon being petitioned by Abraham on behalf of Lot in Sodom, was prepared to rescue all of Sodom that probably had thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people in there, or tens of thousands of people in there. He was prepared to rescue all of Sodom for 50 people, 30, 10. So will the Lord not rescue the whole earth on account of the small number of people that are in consensus concerning the incredible insanity of everybody else?